this is Jacob Roden with part 1 of showing you how to do milling, specifically profile milling in CATIA 3DExperience. So obviously here we have our kind of finished part. We can see all these kind of curves that we have on the side of this, and this is just a sketch I did with a pad. And then obviously we have our safety plane right here in part design. Now what we're going to do, just like we did when we were doing drilling, we're going to go over to our prismatic machining. Obviously I already have it favorited, but you might have to go find it down in your apps. So we're going to open up prismatic machining, and it'll bring us to the same page as before, but since we're not doing holes, once we get down to tools and programming, we're going to have to change some things up. So starting out, all going to be the same, so we're going to have another generic machine. And then rough stock, we already have a rough stock created, which I can show you right in here. So if we do show, you can see it's the same process of creating a rough stock where you're going to select the part body, and then just for this, because in my head we're going to be doing all of these sizes finishing, so we want to make sure that they're all being milled and cleaned up. I made this stock a little bit oversized so that there was going to be material for this to cut, to make sure that none of these sides were raw stock, and not finished. So you can see I just oversized it a little bit. It's the same height, and maybe we can imagine that this material has already been faced or something. So we'll hide that rough stock, but we've already got a rough stock, and we're going to do part operation. So we can see here we have our design part, which is going to be our finished part body. No fixtures. Going to have our rough stock, which we'll select, and this is all the same process with using double click our safety plane, so we can select our safety plane right there, and then got that. We're not going to offset anything. For the feed and speed configuration, you don't have to put this in, but I put in aluminum. We're doing profile contouring, so we're using an end mill around the sides, and I said that we were going to be doing finishing instead of roughing or anything, so this should have a bit of a nicer finish on the sides, and that'll change the speed and feeds that the program eventually runs at. So we're going to press OK here. Then obviously we have our tools. If you already have tools made, you can go through and search them or make some. We're going to make one. Here we have our end mill. There's also a face mill, which would go and clear up the top. Conical mills for doing angled cuts. T-slots, tools for doing T-slots. And then barrel mills and lens mills, just different types of end mills. We also have inserted mill holders, but for this we're just going to make an end mill. And since we're not doing the inside of a hole, just like a drill where if you want to make a specific size hole, you can have a specific size drill, since we're just doing the outside of this, the size isn't necessary, but I'm just going to go with a pretty common 1/2 inch size. I'm going to say that there's going to be no radius on it, just to make sure that we're not leaving any material down at the bottom, assuming this was cutting right down at the bottom. And then we'll just shorten this up a little bit. Since we're not basing this off of any actual drill we have, we don't need to worry too much about here. Oh, 2 inches, there we go. So just create a short little end mill right here. Then you can name it if you need to, press OK, and close out the resource creation. Oh, it's manufacturing view hidden. Obviously feature recognition we haven't focused on yet, but that's all optional. Then we're going to go down into programming, and now this is about when it gets different, other than just making a tool the same way we did previously with a different style of tool. So here, instead of actual machining, we're going to go into prismatic machining, and we're going to do profile contouring, which means that we're going to be cutting those outside sections. There's a couple of different options we have here. Obviously we have roughing if you're taking out a lot of material, or plunge milling, which lets you just take that end mill and bring it down into the part instead of just around the sides. And then we have profile contouring, which is going just from the sides. Facing, which you would use a face mill, so maybe if you had this face was still rough stock but you wanted to finish it, you'd have a face mill come in and clean all this up. And then we have pocketing for making inside pockets. 4-axis pocketing, so if you have this on maybe a rotating table. Trochoid curve following, groove milling for like T-slots, sweep helix following, and a lot of other kind of little fancy options, lots of ribs, corner, different kinds of probing. But yeah, so what we're going to do is obviously we got prismatic machining, and for this we're just going to be doing profile contouring. Now, just like when we were doing drilling, it has the different options of the kind of milling you can do. For this, we're just going to be doing between two planes. So obviously we have our top plane and our bottom plane. So select that, and then the tool search comes up. For this, just like last time, we're just going to go select the tool we already made, since we don't have a tool library. We do not want to continue searching because we already selected our tool. So we've got our tool selected. So automatically this is going to ask to select that bottom plane, and you want to make sure that you have your, pop that open, your rough stock hidden so you're not selecting the wrong object. So we have our bottom. All of these are obviously optional, so you could pick, you know, limiting elements, your top plane, your limits, your boundaries, and then you can change offsets and hardnesses and everything. For this, we're just going to leave it. We're just going to select that bottom plane because it's mandatory, and everything else we'll leave optional for now. Then, obviously, we have our tool selected already. We can see that in there. We've got our strategy, so it's going to be doing zigzag. There's all like, you know, helixing in one way and concentric. There's the different types of milling, so if you're going into or away from the part, tolerances, fixture accuracy, contouring that we might be doing, percentage overlap, compensation output, all these little different options you have for, oh, do you want to do a finish pass? You know, so maybe you want to make sure that you're getting a really nice finish on this. You might have a finish pass to make sure that that last milling of that side is really cleaning it up. And then you have, you know, if you're doing different axes or collisions or everything, and then our macros, which we are going to have to set pretty much just the same as last time. Obviously there's more macros in here, but we're going to be just doing the same ones as last time. So we have our approach, which obviously we're going to be selecting our safety plane by selecting that pink plane that shows up in the window, and then selecting our safety plane. Then clearance, so we got to make sure that we click to activate the macro. This is already set to the safety plane. Our linking retract, which will add in axial motion up to plane. Press that pink plane, press OK. Same with linking approach. And these are the only ones that we're going to need to, the only macros that we're going to need to put in for this operation. But obviously, depending on the complexity of your part and what you're doing, you're going to have to add different macros and probably make them more complicated depending on what kind of features you might be having to try and get around. And obviously feeds and speeds, when we put in that we were doing aluminum and that we were doing finishing, this automatically kind of calculates some of those for us, so we shouldn't have to worry about it. Or you could just go into something like the machiner's handbook or other materials and find, okay, if this is aluminum and maybe our end mill is high-speed steel, then, you know, what feeds and speeds are we going to have to use to get a good finish and everything on that. So once all of these are selected, we can press simulate, and here we can see our tool path being simulated. We have our end mill right here, so it's going to bring it down and then come down into the part, and then we have this green line of where it is going to kind of take that path in the stock to cut all this out. So we can turn the speed down before we do it, just to make sure that we can see everything happening well. We can press the go button, we can watch it come down and cut in everything. And here we can see our toolpath information. So it's going to take about 53.5, 54 seconds. Then we can see our feed rates, where it's going in X, Y, and Z. And if you actually select certain parts, you can see the time go up, the different feed rates it might be doing while it's going around the corners, and the different X, Y, and Z locations it's got as it's going around through the part. So then what we can do is we can, I believe, if we exit out of the simulation and then press simulate, we should have, yep, here we go. So we have our simulation options menu pop up right here. And what you can do is to see what it would actually look like as it was cutting. You should be able to select enable disable material removal deposition. You can also just do the hotkey, which is Shift 8. And here we can see our stock. So this is the stock piece that we created, the oversized piece that we're going to be machining everything out of. Double check that your speed is still low so you can kind of watch it go. And this is what our part's going to be made out of. So if we press go, we can watch as this comes in and cuts our part out of it. And you can see, oh, these are our scrap parts. So this is kind of all the waste that we'll have. And these green lines are our finished cut edges on the inside. And we can see, yeah, that's our finished part. That's what we wanted. And then you can go on to maybe put this in its own fixture and drill holes into it or drill other features you might have. And that is how you use the profile milling in CATIA 3DExperience. Thank you. I hope you learned something and enjoyed watching, and have a great day.